1999 national championship game.
Yeah.
Fourth quarter, 44 seconds left in the game. Come in for an injured Travis Miles. What was that like?
Oh, that's a great story. It's like, oh, crap, here we got to go. And you kind of always say you're ready for it. You're never ready for it. I was terrified. You go warm up, you start throwing. And funny part of that story is Bart Tatum was the offensive line coach, and he was one on the sideline with the headset that he'd get the plays from Jim Sabota, who was up in the box. And this was during a end of game. We needed a touchdown and a 2-point conversion to tie it and to go into overtime. And so they're drawing up plays in the dirt, and they give me a play, and they just said X9, and they went, it was an X9 flag bananas X wheel. And so I go out there, and so I take like 3 steps, and I turn around. I'm like, what's the protection? Because the O-line got to have some protection. I'm like, what are we running? And they're like, there's a few explicits in there, but they're like, get the blank out there, And so I run out there, get in the huddle, and I say the play name, and, ready break. And then the O-line turn, they take like 2 steps, they turn around, and they're like, what's the protection? So I just made up protection. So not only did I not know what the protection was, I didn't know what the play they drew up in the dirt was because they just read it off. All I knew that X had a wheel route. And so there was one guy that I was going to throw it out of bounds to. I knew on that one was that one because I didn't know what anybody was doing. I didn't want to ruin the play. And so they snapped it, threw it over his head, and came back in. But it was a lot going on in that little bit of time. But it was kind of, in fact, I talked to Coach Churchman yesterday, and we actually talked about that play in itself. So it was funny, but chance to get in the game, I guess. Yeah.
What was that experience like, especially those first few seasons, being a part of that team and being on the sideline, just getting to learn from those coaches, some of those other players? What is that like being one of the players that you're like, I know I'm not going to get my chance right now, but it's kind of building up and learning? What's that process like?
It was such a good experience for me because I'd almost say I was kind of a prima donna coming out of high school because, when I was a junior, I was pretty heavily recruited in football and had gotten offered a scholarship to Iowa, but I really wanted to go to K-State, and I had a handful of other little ones. And then I got hurt my senior year, and really Iowa just called and said, you got to take it or leave it, because somebody had decommitted from Notre Dame. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I'll be fine, and then basketball was playing, and I was getting interest in basketball, and now, knowing what I know now, I wasn't getting looked at in basketball, but I thought I was. And so got to the end of the year, I really didn't have anything for scholarships, just Northwest Missouri and, UNO and a couple other smaller schools. And so I came down here. I got to meet Coach Churchma and Coach Bostwick and Coach Sabota. Bostwick recruited the area, and then Sabota did quarterbacks. And so I was like, man, I'm going to walk in, start, fine, 4 years, be great. And got down here, and I wasn't even close to ready. I mean, I was so in the dark about how little I knew. I was from a really good high school football team, but it was not because of me. I was like a mailman delivering mail to whoever needed it, but I had good dudes around me, but I just didn't know much about the college game at all. So it was very humbling, very trying first semester, first year. I was ready to quit, didn't want to go to school here, wasn't playing, just not a lot going right. And, sat down with Coach Churchman, talked about it, and, and he said there's brighter days ahead, basically, and you got to weather the storm a little bit. Parents told me I couldn't come back home, it's that or join the military. And so I stayed. And it all worked out great. It all ended. But to go back to your original question then is like, okay, well, what was that like? It was very humbling, number one. And it just said, okay, I got a longer way to go than I thought. And then it's like, okay, how are we going to attack it? And, Chris Greisen was a great one. Travis Miles was a good one. And then even when they graduated, it wasn't convinced that I was going to be a starter. I had to really fight and claw to get it. And so that was good, but probably over time, like my first 2 years, we won 2 national championships. I'm like, man, this is great. I forgot my camera one year. I'm like, I'll do it next year when we play in the national championship game. And it was just like, this is easy. And then I've gone the rest of my coaching career and not made a national championship game. Made the playoffs, bowl games, but I mean, that's elusive, And so this gave me a great appreciation for how many things got to go right, what type of team you have to have, what type of pieces have to be there, and the ball's got to bounce your way. It just might not always happen. And so that's probably the best thing that I've, through time, is like how fortunate I was, how much I took it for granted, the winning and the success and, just being a part of it. But it's, it's having good players and having a good staff and then learning from those. Culture just carries on from player to player, and then you try and just, one-up them. And so long, winding answer there, but it was kind of what I took away was just, I'm not ready to play. I'm not very good. I'm a skinny, Sabonis. I walked in the weight room, true story. I did track only because my dad said, if you're not doing track, you're not trying to get better. And so I ran track in high school and, made state in track, and then I got last in the heat at state, just good enough to get there. I got there, but I was slow, and then I was really skinny because I'd gotten sick. So I came in at like 180 pounds, just a skinny punk.
Yeah.
Just nothing, no strength. Didn't lift weights very much because I thought it'd throw off my shot in basketball. And we go into the weight room, and we're maxing out, and I'm looking around at all the freshmen, and I'm like, oh my God, these guys are all lifting over 225, and I don't think I could do. Well, I know I couldn't do 200. I know I couldn't do 185. I sure as hell wasn't going to try it and embarrass myself. I was like, well, maybe I'll hide in the back. Just wait around and not do it. So I weighed in. I think it was like 177, and then I didn't even bench. I just stood there, and then John Gustafson was Coach Gus was our strength coach, D-line coach, and he's like, "Back, didn't you lift?" And I said, "Yeah, you didn't see me." I was like, "I was right over there." And he's like, "What'd you do?" I was like, 185, and so I started off on a bad foot because I lied about how much I could lift.
Luckily, they gave you a chance after that.
They let it go. But at 185, I was still 20 pounds lighter than any other person there. I probably would have done 175.
Yeah.
And the next meeting, Boda's like, if you don't bench 300 pounds here, you'll never start. I'm like, oh my Lord, 300 pounds. And so it was a heck of an introductory to everything. It was like this giant hill you had to climb up, so it was a good dose of reality.
Yeah, I know. It kind of echoed that. I talked to Luke Matthews on one of my previous episodes, and I've known Luke for the past 2 years.
Sure.
And I know talking to him about kind of that experience too, he really highlighted, he's like, I think a lot of these guys, they come into college and they're the best players at their high school. Then you get to college and it's like everybody was the best player at their high school. So seeing that mindset, even just transcending the years and different decades of coming in and playing football in different eras, I mean, it seems like it really holds true to guys come in, have a different expectation of what's going to happen, and it's kind of a sink or swim whether or not you accept that role. And I feel like, at least from an outsider's perspective, college football right now, seeming a lot with the NIL, transfer portal and everything, is guys are, well, if I'm not getting my chance here, I'm going to go somewhere else and get my chance. Right. And I know Nick Saban talked about it a little bit. I'm hoping that kind of starts to even out. Have you seen any effects so far? Because I know being at Wayne State, being at UCM, Wayne State, would transfer portal have been open whenever you were head coaching there?
No, not yet. Not yet. It was just starting with that, and we probably didn't have anybody good enough to enter the portal. I mean, they played well, but no, it was just the beginning of it.
Yeah.
But it's drastically changed the game. Yeah. I mean, if it was like this when I was playing, it's just so normal for everybody to transfer and leave and not fight through it. And that's like the thing I needed the most was, to be told I'm not good enough, to be shown I'm not good enough, and then have to earn your way through it. Yeah. It just makes it mean so much more. And today, I would be the guy that would transfer. I mean, that's why everybody transfers. I'm not playing. I think I should. I've been told I'm good enough, and then I'm not believing my eyes. I'm not believing what I'm seeing. I should go somewhere else and play. And so that's really, really changed, because that was, everybody said play football because – it teaches you life lessons. I think it's really the best sport you can play because there's so much that goes into it about teamwork, overcoming adversity, how much you train for really, 1 day a week in the fall, of potential success or loss, and how to handle those, how to keep working. There's just so many life lessons that when they graduate and you go to an employer, like people want to hire football players because they've gone through it. Well, to me, that's changing now. It's like, okay, there's a kid's been at school, 4 different schools, and social media is getting more prevalent. I joke and I say aunts and uncles are getting way more involved because what they view is like you come to Northwest as a Division II school. This is a borderline Division I school.
Yeah.
I mean, when you play the MIAA, if you're going to win and play here, you got to have really good talent.
Yeah.
So you can't just say, well, you're going to D2, you should play right away. It just doesn't work like that. But the aunts and uncles of the world, can't believe little Johnny's not playing, go somewhere else, and then it's just a constant trickle-down effect, And so it's scary. It is really scary. You try and talk as best you can. I think, Division II is about 3 years behind Division I in where we're going to be at as far as how much that's affecting. So like this spring, you're going to start seeing a lot more Division II players that are transferring. Yeah. Last spring it was there wasn't much. In the fall you saw more, and there'll be a bunch this spring, and then it'll keep going at our level because it's catching up to D1, and the players are good enough at our level to go in and play right away at Division I. I'm telling you, it's just not a big difference. There's more of them, but if you're a star here, I can't really say you're not going to be a star at that level either. You might play, but you got to try and be a big fish wherever you're at, to play. So landscape's changing, man. It's different for sure.
Yeah, I always say this is closest to Division I you can get without having the actual label, especially not even just MIAA, but coming into Northwest football and Northwest athletics, just the history that every program on this campus has had. Obviously, football, 6 national championships, most in history for Division II. Basketball had that dynasty going for years, and just that's how I describe it whenever I pitch it to people, because I have a bunch of friends that go to Mizzou. I have a bunch of friends that go to Missouri State, and they're always like, well, you're not Division I. And I'm like, well, you look at, and I think basketball with the guys that went to Drake and followed Coach Mack over to Drake this past year, it's the talent level, you really can't tell the difference until you actually put them up against each other, and oftentimes you really can't see that difference. Now, with the transfer portal, just kind of that idea of moving around and stuff like that, because I know you got a family. How has that affected you and them throughout your career as you've kind of transitioned to different schools, going to Wayne State as a coordinator, then to UCM, and then heading over to Tulane, and kind of how has that affected you and your family?
Yeah, you've done your homework. You know a lot about our history, so bravo. It's hard. It's hard, and it was a unique. It's been unique for myself. I initially didn't get into coaching. I came to college, and I didn't want to be a coach. My daddy was a head football coach for 30 years at Omaha Central, and parents were divorced, and I lived with my mom, and I went to Elkhorn, so I didn't even get a chance to play for my dad. But I knew, I kind of like coaching, but I just knew what it did to families, and sometimes you get so involved with coaching, your family gets put on the back burner. And so I came up around it a little bit, and I didn't want that. And Dad is great. Dad did a great job with us, but I just knew something that came along with it. My family were all teachers, and so I just said, I'm going to not coach, and I'm going to make a lot of money. And neither of those have worked out very well. But so, when I finished playing, I went to camp, down with the Cowboys and had a cup of coffee there, and then finished, and I was, did the GIS computer science thing here. And so I finished, and I worked that field for a couple of years, and it just didn't scratch the itch. And then I actually moved back to Omaha and was at Wells Fargo for 5 years. And great job, it was steady, good security. I was good at it, but it still didn't have passion for it. I just didn't have the. I hate saying it, but it's like, okay, you get to the weekends, there's no competition. And so when, people talk about astronauts, they land, what do they do for fun? There's not, what's their thrill seeking? And, you see how people can get into narcotics or alcohol or things that, try and get them busy. And so, not on that scale, but it's like, okay, you go through the work week and then you have the weekend off. And it's like, okay, well, I miss anything competitive. I miss football. I miss, that. So, I quit my job at 28 and, quote unquote, went back to school. And so, I told my parents that, and they're like, what are you doing? Really? I said, yeah, I think so. And I'm going to try and be a graduate assistant. And that's basically like the first step to becoming a coach. Not always, but a lot of times you go as a graduate assistant. And how they pay you is they pay for your master's classes, and you work nonstop. I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's your introduction, and you do it for 2 years and you get your master's and you move on, or you keep coaching. And so I did that and loved it. I mean, it's like the first day I was like, okay, probably should have started in this, and it was like, it wasn't coaching, it wasn't hard. You work literally 16, 18-hour days every day, but it's not, you don't feel like that. If I would have done that at Wells Fargo or at Cerner, I'd be like, shoot me. No way. And football was like that. So I started over. And it's funny, like that same, right after I went through that fall and I quit my job, GA'd, and then I met my wife, Andrea, because we had gone to watch at our house. I bought a house right before I quit my job, just so I made sure that I had enough, had money at that point and credit.
Yeah.
And I was like, we'll buy a house. I couldn't afford it, but I got roommates. But I knew being a GA I wasn't going to be able to afford it, but on paper at that time I could. And so got 4 roommates, and we lived in this house. Well, my brother was in charge of paying the cable bill. And usually did a great job, but he'd forgotten to pay the bill. And so we had our cable cut off when we were trying to watch the Northwest National Championship game right there in 2009.
Yeah.
And so 3 or 4 of us guys left our house and we went to this bar called Draft House, and just because we knew to have the game on there. So we watched the rest of the game, had a couple drinks. It was great. They won. And then Andrea walked in. I didn't know Andrea, but she walked in. And I'm like, wow, who is this hottie walking in? And I followed her, and she sat down at a table where I had some common people I knew. She really sat at a table with one of my high school best friends, his brother. And I'm like, wow, is there somebody I know? And so got up the courage to go over and talk to her. But in the meantime, I'm like, man, she's going to ask me what I do. And I'm 28. I just went back to school, don't have a job, and now I'm basically a non-paid football coach.
Yeah.
Not very impressive. So I'm like, maybe I should be a helicopter pilot, or say my uncle owns Spalding or something, to try to impress this beautiful woman. And so I walked up to her, and sure as heck, we started talking and hit it off. And the whole time I was waiting for her, when's it going to happen? And she did. She's like, well, what do you do? And, there was a pause as it's going a million miles in my head, like, what do I say? And I told her the truth. I said I was going back to school, and luckily she was great with it. And, she's been my rock ever since. And she flew back out of town because her friend had just flown her up for her birthday, and we stayed in touch. And eventually got engaged, married, and it's been unbelievable. So it was funny how things work out. So that was the start of our family. And I knew getting into coaching, the one thing I've kind of been trying to be cautious of is how it affects your family.
Yeah.
And I was always big on loyalty to coaches. Was preached that early on, stay loyal to who you're working with, who you're on, and go. And so anyways, I GA'd, and then they offered me a job to stay on. Great, I'm in. And I say I'm in. It's like a $16,000
Hey, it's a job.
It's a job. I told my wife,
after,
I'm like, hey,
yeah.
It's exactly right. I was making 28 cents an hour, and now it's this. So, and she got a job to really support us, to support my habit. And, we're coaching, everything went great. And then, UNO drops football.
Yeah.
And
which is so unfortunate. Their logos always look the best on the helmets too, because they got the black and the red coming together.
Yeah, it's in the Maverick Mojo, and it was I loved it there, and it was a great place. And we were #1 in the country 2 years in a row. Now we didn't finish that way.
Yeah,
that's when I started realizing how hard things were. I mean, we entered the playoffs #1 2 years in a row and lost. But so and I tell Andrea, she's like, "Well, is this common?" And I'm like, "No," but. So we're searching for a job, and I had to take an NAIA school job, and we stayed, kept our house. Jackson was, she was pregnant with Jackson, and now this guy she moved here to marry to be with is unemployed, and she's pregnant. Yeah. So we went to Midland, and that was a good experience, and we didn't move because it was drivable. But I applied for a DB job. I mean, it was just like find any job you can get, and it was as a defensive. I didn't know I couldn't backpedal.
Hey, if you're a quarterback, you know how to read defenses.
I'll just make it up as we go. And head coach called and said, hey, I don't have a DB job, but our OC might be leaving. And I'm like, leaving for what? And he's like, to take a high school job. And I'm like, well, when are you going to know? And he's like, in a week or so. And I'm like, boy, I prayed for that dude to get that job, man. I was like, anything I can do to help you get that job, let me know. He's now a head coach at a Division II, Eastern New Mexico, in the small world. But so we did that, and then we've moved around, and that was really hard. But our kids are so adaptable. They're great. I mean, they're just high flyers. And then Andrea's, is so adaptable to moving. Like, I really don't even like moving that much. But she grew up moving around.
Yeah.
And was really good at it, really helped us, and was really, really supportive. I mean, just never said no. It's like, if you think it's better for you, do it. And so we always had those conversations, and probably the hardest one was when we'd just gotten a head job at Wayne State, and we were there 2 years, and Tulane got the job offer at Tulane. And you're just like, man, and we spent a year and a half building our dream home, quote unquote, and we lived in it for 3 months.
Yeah. And
so we rented a house for a year and a half that was small, just wasn't what you wanted, but it was, what you do when you're building, yeah. And she just said, you might regret not trying the Division I thing. And so we did it, and it was a wonderful experience. It was great. I mean, we moved to New Orleans. We lived uptown. As an adult, it's perfect. I mean, that's a fun place, cool place. Culture's great. Better places to raise a family, in my opinion. Yeah. And that recruiting, the NIL, took off so much there that, I never saw Jackson, I didn't see doing his sport. Didn't see him play one football game. Didn't see any basketball. And I saw like 2 baseball games. And same thing with Jess. I got to see a little bit of volleyball just because their schedule. But in May, for recruiting, this is in May. This is even big. I was on a plane 29 out of 31 days. You're just constantly gone. And so that was where it got to the point, like, well, what are we doing here? Why are we doing it? It was great. We'd won the Cotton Bowl. That was fun. But then, like my son got chased by a homeless guy a couple times. My daughter was scared. And then we had an incident that came up, and Andrew and I just kind of looked at each other and like, I don't know that this is worth it. It just isn't. For our kids, the reason we got into this was because of kids and family. It's like having that opportunity. I'm like, but that's totally gone. At Division I, there's no. If your kids are really little or old, okay. But if they're our kids' age, and if you want to be involved with them, which I did, so we actually signed a contract extension, and everything was great. And then we got to June, and there was a kind of just an incident with some trouble with just some of the bad there in NOLA, and we said I think we need to move. Yeah. And find a spot for our kids to go to school for 4 years. And Andrea's job was, she had done a great job with it, good enough, and the property management that we could have some sort of a landing pad, and help her out. And so, we moved back to Omaha, and said, okay, we'll set up here. We got the house we wanted, and the kids got into school, and we're doing good. And I volunteered coach, but I was done coaching. That was it. I wasn't going to coach anymore. I'll just be a dad now, and we'll work the business, and that'll be the rest of our lives. And God darn it, then Northwest calls, and and I'm got to be like. So we sat out for that fall, but I'm like, so I know we said we were done, but there's probably one school that if it opened, I'd take the job that I just never really thought it would. Yeah. And
great place to raise a family too.
That's right. It's like the Ville. It's perfect. So we jumped on, and I was like, and Andrew's like, if you want it, let's do it. We'll figure out the rest as we go. And Jackson's up here with me now, and he started school already because we're kind of batching it up. And, we're living in a shouse, which is like a shed house.
Yeah. And is it out behind Dollar General, like those kind of small houses back there?
No. This is.
Or I guess I shouldn't really ask where you live. I just know there's like a tiny house village back there. That's
this is a guy's. It's a big 2-car garage that and then they built an apartment basically above it while they were building another house on property. Yeah. And they used it as an Airbnb, and so like for the first, 3 months, there's 4 of its coaches lived in an Airbnb, just like animal style. I mean, there's never a meal cooked. We just jumped in and recruited and went. And then when we decided to have Jackson move down, I said we better have a little. No offense to you coaches, I love you guys, but I want him to have his own bed and room, and
don't want him to get the college experience.
Yes,
too early.
exactly. We're not of age yet, so we stayed at the Mazingo Hotel for first couple weeks, and then this came up, and it was a good spot, so it's perfect. So it's where we are. It's long. Again, we're here, and now we're started. So my family's been fantastic, and they're just the light of my eyes. I live and die everything with them, so I've really enjoyed having them everywhere with me. And they come, like even at Tulane, they flew. Andrea took them to every away game, so I'd be able to see them in the hotels and come to the games, and that's an important experience in my opinion.
I got to ask, because I looked through your Instagram a little bit just to kind of get kind of your history going back and forth, but a lot of posts from UCM and stuff like that. But one thing that did stand out, do you guys have an affinity for Halloween and dressing up and just the decorations? Or
I love Halloween. If you'll see my truck right now, I don't have my key, but I'm a big Mike Myers fan. There's a mask of Mike Myers on the passenger side seat, keychain. But we love Halloween, and it's always been my favorite holiday. And so to dress up, I think we dress up every year.
I was about to say, I see group costumes.
Yeah, we make it a theme.
Them.
Yeah, you did do some research, but that's we do the house, and every year seems to get bigger. This year, they make these giant skeletons.
Yeah.
One was 12 foot tall, and I'm like, I ordered it, and then Andrew's like, oh my God, really? And I'm like, we have to have it. It's one of those you have to have. So we have fun with that. NOLA was cool with that. New Orleans is that's their thing down there is Halloween. But the kids embrace it. Andrew and I are big kids during that day.
Yeah.
We dress up and scare them and run around with chainsaws. And so that's why the only thing I got to find a house here, before Halloween. I just you got to be able to do something for Halloween.
Yeah. What's been the favorite group costume that y'all have done?
So I'm also a big Star Wars nerd. So personally, I like the Star Wars. Kids just kind of did it. Jackson was on board. We did one where we were zombies, football zombies. Jackson and I were football zombies, and Andrea and Jessa were cheerleader zombies, and that was a lot of fun as a group. Collectively, when we were in New Orleans, we did a serial killer theme. And Jessa dressed up as Penny from It. I mean, she had the balloon. She had it, killed it. I mean, just everything was perfect. Jackson was Freddy Krueger, and he had it perfect. And Andrea was the dude from Scream with the long face.
Oh yeah.
And then I got to be Mike Myers, so I was good with that. But we had a smoke machine, and that was fun to see all that. So I went through a few of them, but those were what I remember being the most fun, and then the kids really have taken in. Now they're getting into high school, getting a little might want to go with the kids, my friends, but might want to stay at home, but they end up going out, and then any candy that they get, they come back, and then they hand it all back out, and then I get to hide and scare, so hopefully they'll come back into it, but they're getting a little too cool for school here, so it might just be Andrea and I moving forward.
Hey, great tradition
That's
to
right.
carry on. I think have you ever seen Modern Family?
Oh yeah, I love it. Yeah.
I watch it through clips. I've never seen the full show, but one of the clips came up, and it was I don't know their names, but it was a group Halloween picture. And it was one of the daughters. The mom kept sending her back. She's like, "You can't wear that for Halloween." You can, and it was, hey, carry on the tradition.
Yeah.
They'll appreciate it whenever they get older.
That's
they'll be
exactly right.
Hey, that family time, getting to spend that time together for Halloween.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's fun, and you're right. That's how it is, and just try and create some memories and some traditions and things that when they get older, they can say, "Man, that was silly," or "I want to do it with my family," or just memories. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Kind of switching it back over to football a little bit and your journey as a coach. Through your different stops, there's always been a lot of offensive success that's carried over. I know whenever you stopped at Midland, one of the best rushing games in the NAIA, those years you were there. Wayne State's had some great teams whenever you were there. UCM, number 1 and number 2 offense in the nation 2 of the years you were there.
Yeah.
What about it, and what about your coaching style and the players you look for, do you think translates to that on the field?
Yeah, great question. am not very smart in a lot of things, but for whatever reason with football and processing, I can do that fast and do that well. And so I enjoy the mechanics of scheming and putting a game plan together and, that design, the artistic side of it, because I can't draw at all. I'm terrible. I don't have any artistic ability whatsoever, but to me, putting a game plan together is that one thing that I can say that's kind of taking pieces, put it all together, and then to go out and see it executed is a blast. And so I think what I've done through the years is kind of just trying, okay, what pieces do we have, and not try and force fit it into one offense and say, this is my offense, you guys adjust to it. And because of that, I played here, we threw the ball a lot. I couldn't run at all, so they had to throw. And then I went to UNO, and all they did was run the ball. It was a nightmare for me. I was like, and I coached receivers. I was like, they were called wide blockers. They weren't even called wide receivers. And that was boring, but I'm like, can we throw it? And then our quarterback was Zach Miller, and he's one of my really good friends. He played in the NFL for 10 years. He moved to a tight end. We had a lot of talent, but just didn't throw the ball.
That reminds me of the wing tee. We ran back in high school. It was wide receivers. You knew your goal. You weren't catching the ball during the game. You were blocking the whole game.
Like practice, creating ways to make it fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, you weren't. If it was 3rd and 15, you still would run it. And
yeah.
But that helped me to learn both sides. And then when I got that job at Midland, they were veer option offense, veer option based offense, Army, Air Force, which I know nothing about. But he's like, do you think you can do that? And I just need a job. So I was like, absolutely. And went through that spring doing that. And then I got to the end of the spring, my coach, I didn't quite lie to you. I mean, I could run the offense, but I was like, I don't have any answers. If somebody stops, midline or arc option, veer option, I don't have a lot of back. I think we got to kind of meld with something else. And he was great. He was a defensive coach, like, do your thing. And so, I just had so many different stops where they just kind of combined it all into one, and then take whatever you have. So, like at Midland, if they run the veer, like your high school, you ran wing T. If you took all those dudes running wing T and just say we're going to run, Mike Leach air raid offense, you're going to be terrible. You're going to be awful. But you still could do a little bit of it. You just got to figure out what that balance is. Yeah. And so Midland was the same way. We might have done more spread, but it was run based. We just smoke and mirrors until we can recruit to our talent. And so that's the goal. It's the same thing we're doing here. Is like, okay, well, what do we have? And we're going to install this offense, but that's all we really did all spring was like, what can we do and what are we not good at? And then you just take those pieces that you have, and I really think the most important part of the job for us as coaches is like putting the pieces in the right spot. You could have all the nice pieces that you want, but if you're not using them effectively, then it's just a waste. And so that's what I think makes offenses go. And you got to have a great quarterback. I think everywhere I've been, we've had great quarterback play. Yeah. That's been spoiled there. Had a lot of good kids that have played, and so that helps. And so that's the first thing. You got to make sure you have quarterbacks that are tough, competitive dudes, and had those, and then you kind of recruit around them. And now we have a pretty good mold of what we want, and we know what we got to recruit to. And but like this first year, even really almost first 2 years, year and a half, is going to be a hybrid. It's not going to be exactly what we do because we're really taking, somebody else's shopping list of baking goods and making our own cake, as best as we can, and until we go to the shop for ourselves to make our own cake, it's going to be a little bit of a hodgepodge. But I think that's what you have to do to be a good coach, though, is be able to be flexible with that. Yeah.
With that, coming in, I mean, obviously you came in and kind of like you mentioned, you're coming in with a team that was already here, got a few recruits and stuff, got a few transfers, but what's that like coming into a new spot where the team's used to a different system, used to a different head coach? How is that experience winning over the locker room, for lack of a better term, winning over the locker room, but also just melding yourself into the culture that's already been built here?
Yeah. Every time's interesting and different. Like, this has been a breath of fresh air. It's been the best spot I've come in where the kids are just starved for attention, basically that want to get to where you want to get to and what your goals are. And so it's been so much fun because, you know, I was fortunate enough to hire the staff that you want to hire, and then to have those kids see what those guys are. And because it takes a long time to earn their trust. It really does. Because you can say you're going to do all these things and be this great and culture is going to change, but you got to do it day in and day out. And they're listening. They get excited. You know, that's a different vibe. And everybody says vibe's great, energy's great. You know, well, okay, but how's it going to be, you know, week 8 of spring ball? You know, is what I tell them, or middle of summer, or in the fall, because anybody can be excited early. It's just how do we carry it over? And these kids have been phenomenal. It's just been a blast. And I think they have some really good seniors that really care. They want to win. They'll do whatever. And so that leadership's there. The culture's there. And, you know, the previous staff did a lot of great things with that, you know, to give them credit. So it's been really nice to have that. And then now it's like you said, finding the pieces, rearranging them, and then, you know, trying to make the thing go.
Yeah. Now, this is going to be another one, a little bit of digging that I did. Are you going to bring back the selfies with the quarterbacks that you used to always post?
You did. I like it. I love selfies. Like
I've got a few examples right here.
You do have one. Yeah. That's a good crew, right? Hey, see, that one was our quarterback coach here now, Tweehouse, the one on the bottom left.
Bottom left, right here?
Yeah, that's Logan Tweehouse.
Oh, heck
He's our, and then the one right behind me is Brooke Bowles to your right.
Right here?
One more to the right, far in the blacks, yep.
Right here?
His 2 older brothers won national championships here at UCM, or at Northwest, so it's a cool picture. I love promoting the guys, and we usually, after every spring game, do a team photo of the group, the offense or defense, and I got to this today, to the game, when the white won, and I'm like, we got to do a picture, so we all laid down and was just harnessing it, and doing it, so we'll definitely do the quarterbacks. I think it's just fun to have. Yeah. Those are memories that you have with those guys. And like QBs, like those guys are all clowns. Just Kyle Bradley and Jordan Flowers, Bowles, Twee were in there. And, just the other day, I make them do current events every meeting they come in. They got to talk about something non-sports related, just some levity and just,
I love it. I love it. Diversify.
I don't always want to just talk football with them. I'd like to develop our relationship. Well, I used to come in, and after in Warrensburg, Jimmy John's was there. They delivered. They were that freaky fast. And so I was like, I'd have a sub delivered, and I'd get Slims. And so I was really picky growing. Like, I didn't do like the lettuce, tomato, the sauces, everything on there. I was just bland. I think I've gotten older. I've gotten a little more adjusted to it. But I would just get these slim sandwiches, and the slim meant that it was just meat and cheese. And they were just like, God, that's so dry. How do you eat that? And I'm like, what are y'all talking about? It's normal. It's a sandwich, water. And so anyways.
I am on their team with that. I know.
It's like, right? I understand it. I was like, hey, it's my world. I was like, you eat how you want to eat. I'm going to eat. This is my sandwich. And they'd bring in like a water and set it on there, or some oil and vinegar, and just joke. And so that crew, a couple of them, I just had a group text the other day as they asked about. And every year I'll have a group text with the QBs, just tied in old and young. And one of them had some nasty toes, and he tried to wear like flip-flops into the office meeting room. And so like from that day on, Bezak was his name. He's also in that picture. There's a sock rule that you have to have socks coming in my office, and it's still to this day. Every quarterback's one of the first time you're wearing slides, you got socks on, and. So I sent that out in a group message. It was like the sock rule is still in effect. And then one of them brought up a current event that was similar to that guy. And so I just said, hey, guys, hope you're doing well. This is the yada, yada, yada. And they're like, you still eat those dry-ass sandwiches? And then they went on like 15. They're like, I'm getting dry mouth thinking about it. And so anyways, that's funny, that picture. But so, yeah, we'll still do some selfies. Yeah. I love the social media. If you can tell, I'm always trying to push our player stuff out. Yeah. I think it's a great way because a lot of people want to know, on it. So anyway, we can fly our flag, in the colors and do it. I'm going to do it and brag on them, and I love that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Did that team or did that group of quarterbacks have like a nickname along those lines? Or?
They did. They Sniper Squad. And they something we started doing, and all of them do it. But just like we're a bunch of snipers, but they maybe put an A on the end of it, so it's Snipa 1P, not 2 Ps. It's Snipa Squad. Yeah, that's what they do. So good.
Yeah, it seems like you build great relationships with everybody that you come into. And I mean, from my perspective, looking at it, obviously from the outside in, but it seems like that's part of what translates into the success with the offense and on that side of the ball. Now, whenever you went to Tulane, I know you said that job offer just kind of came out of nowhere, and that it was a big jump. I mean, going from a Division II school to going up to a team competing. I mean, they had that massive turnaround, but competing top 10 in the nation. How did that offer come about, and how did that position come about?
Yeah, great question. Good story, too, is I had actually just accepted the Central Missouri head coaching job and was their head coach for about 2 days.
Wow.
And Jim Sabota, what had happened was Jim Sabota, who was my mentor, he was the head coach there. And he got hired as the offensive coordinator down there. And so that job was open, but he had never submitted an official resignation. So until they did that, they couldn't offer the job. And so I'd been kind of back channel talking to Jerry Hughes and their other assistant AD, and got to the point where they kind of hammered everything out. And they said, well, it'll be announced on Monday if it's there. So I took the job on Friday. I said, okay, if everything's there, I mean, assuming it's on paper, I'm in. We're good. I started calling assistants about moving. And then Sunday night, Boda called and asked if I wanted to be an analyst, and I said no, I don't want to be an analyst. And I'd love to be there, but I can't be an analyst. And then Willie called on Willie Fritz, who was also Coach Fritz, who was also the coach at Central Missouri, at one point in time called and said, well, I might have a wide receiver position open. And I said, okay. And, he shot a dollar amount, and I just said, I can't do it for that, And Monday's like, well, okay, I'll call you back Monday night. He called back Monday night, and like the Godfather, he said, gave me an offer I couldn't refuse. And so I said, I'll take it. I didn't interview. I've never been on campus, I'm in. I told Boda called, and he's like, did you get offered? He's like, you're non-negotiable. If I go, you got to go. So we went, and I kind of knew about Tulane, but I didn't. I knew where it was and where we're going. My wife thought it was a full circle moment because she wanted to go to law school there, and it was just always wanted to go there. And so we get down there, and I'm starting to look up more at Tulane, and I'm like, oh my God, we might get fired after this year. What are we doing? And they were 2-10, and not looking good. The assistants down there were nice guys, but they're like, we're coaching for our lives. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, Andrew, we took this job. We might be here 6 months. I'm sorry, And she's like, well, anywhere you go, you turn it around, And just ultimate positive woman. She's just awesome. And so we lived in a hotel for 5 months there, or I did, and we started going to work. And unique situation. We went through spring, and towards the end of spring, Willie called me and the tight ends coach in and just said, you guys are going to be the play callers moving forward. Whoa, okay, that's odd. And he's like, here's what we're going to do. He's like, we can split it up 3 ways, where you and Boda and Slade Nagel's name call plays, or you two figure it out. So we went back to the drawing board, and I'm not going to tell my boss anything about that, or Boda that we just didn't decide. So he just came to us and said, here's how we're going to do it. But so anyway, so I had to, when I took that job, I'll go back a couple steps, took the job, I had to call Jerry and just say, sorry, I'm not going to do it. He's like, well, just give me to Wednesday. Let's just see if get down there, and if it's not something you like. And he was super great about it. He's like, basically, try it out down there for a week. If you don't like it. And so when we got down there, and we find out 2-10, all the things that weren't nice, and it's kind of like a high school athlete. You hear D1, you think Alabama, you think Georgia. Okay, I don't think Tulane. Northwest has a lot nicer facilities than Tulane.
Yeah.
just not in New Orleans, and it's not, around there. There's a few more things.
You're not
there.
in that Southern football culture.
Yeah, and the money and all that stuff's different. But facility-wise, I'm serious. It's their stadium was a little bigger, but there's no indoor. The locker room is way better here. Weight room's comparable, So, anyways, ended up staying there. And so when Willie split the play calling up, he just said, basically, John, you're going to call, or Slade was going to call first and second downs. He's like, you're going to call all third downs, all red zone, and all 2-minute drives.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, Jesus. I mean, the first and second down are easy ones, you
Yeah.
know. I'm like, I'd rather have that one. He's like, no, I want set up this way. And so, of course, then, this happens, and all the coaches we had like 8 new coaches that year because somebody got fired. Well, then everybody's like, oh, my God. Now we're splitting up play call. We're screwed. We're just – and –
It's going Bush League.
Right.
It's we're going to throw any idea out there we can.
And it was. And so we went that way, and I was like, I don't know how this is going to work. And it actually worked really seamlessly. As soon as anybody crossed the 25, I switched on and I called plays the rest of the way in, or if it's third down, and we communicate. We'd steal play from one another, though. Like, I'd have a third down call that he'd call earlier, and I'm like, damn it, I wanted to use that one, Don't call those. So we had to hammer that out. But ended up having just a magical season. Had a really great group of guys, and really went well. And so that was a lot of fun to have that success and see it there. But it was a big adjustment, to go. But it was experience I'll never forget, that's for sure.
Yeah. Have you translated anything that you've learned from there to – obviously, coming here at the end of the day, what all have you learned that you've kind of translated over here?
Yeah, I think the best part of that job was working for Willie Fritz. Seeing him operate as a head coach, I see why he's had success everywhere he's been. He's just a non-negotiable dude, and really my way, same way I am. It's very black and white. There just is no gray area, and he worked as hard, if not harder, than any head coach I'd ever seen. He just sits in every meeting. He's got a really outside-the-box mentality, the way he thinks about meetings, special teams, approaches every game. Just does not leave one rock unturned. We went into every game as the most prepared team, I promise you. It was ad nauseum. Even as a staff, I hated it sometimes because you just recovered and went over so much, but we were really prepared. And he created an environment that it was I don't want to say a bunch of no names, but it's Tulane. It's not Florida State. It's not Georgia. But these guys knew they were playing. They were roll wave no matter what. It was you're playing for this team more than you're playing for your last name.
Yeah.
And I think that's really why we won. And really, I know that's why we beat USC was because our guys weren't on NIL money.
Yeah.
Very much.
They wanted to be there.
We were a bunch of 3-star guys that just believed and played harder, and found ways to win because we never really just dominated anybody. We just won enough. Heck, we won the conference championship game against UCF, and we got smoked early in the year by UCF. But we just came back at it. We played Cincinnati, and they'd won 36 home games in a row, and we had to win that game late in the year to make the championship game, and went up there and we did it. In the previous year they made the playoffs. They were a top 4 team in the country. And it's just I took a lot, and I think it was really helped me be prepared for this job at this time.
Yeah. Kind of asked about your approach coming in, kind of your philosophy on coming in as a new coach. What has the players' response been this year so far coming in with your staff?
Oh, great. As far as the kids accepting us?
Yeah, like what's that response? What's the reception been from the players?
Oh, it's awesome. They take it. When you talk about relationship with the guys, we have great energy. It's fun, but it's not always like that.
Yeah.
We ride their butts. We coach them really hard, but I think, what makes it work is they know that it's just not to the point of resentment. We're going to coach you hard. We're going to love you just as hard, have just as much fun.
Yeah.
With it. And once you have that balance, it's like a father-son. There's days, there's plenty of days where they walk off, and I'm sure they do not like Coach Mack.
Yeah.
But they wake up the next day and understand, there's a point to it all. there's a reason they're doing this, and they're going to be better off because of it. And I think reception's been phenomenal. Our assistant coach has really done a great job. If you come by, the football offices, there's always 20, 30 guys there. It's better than anywhere I've ever been. And I used to have to put food in the office just to get kids to come in. It's like cats. Once you feed cats, they keep coming in. And the players just love being around them. Our coaches love being around the kids. And that's not normal. I know coaches say they love kids and they get into coaching because of it, but sometimes they don't want to be around kids all the time. And it's not in their blood, or they just past their prime. But right now, these guys just love it, and that's what's going to make us great. I think because the same energy is in recruiting, same energy when we're coaching on the field, same energy if the kids have issues, talking about things off the field. So I think reception's been great. I couldn't be happier with how this spring, everything's gone since I've been here.
Yeah. And I know we're getting close to the time, so this will be the last
you're
question.
Fine. There's no rush.
With that, but what's your expectation for this year going forward? Because I know a lot of fans, especially with the history at Northwest, still successful seasons these past 2 seasons.
Yeah.
I had a buddy play at Quincy University for a few years, and he's like, I hear you complaining about, or Northwest fans complaining about winning 8 games during the year, and it's like, we would kill to be able to do that. But I know there's a lot of those questions coming into this season. What are your expectations going into this season and just going forward from here?
That's a great question. And you take this job because of those expectations, Quincy's had some good years, to use them as reference, or other schools, but, at the same time, I wouldn't be interested in those jobs, so you kind of want that pressure, and you want to have, when you have the expectations to win, you usually have the resources to win, and you want to make sure those are balanced up, and I think we have enough of those on enough resources to do that. So the next step is, okay, what's the process? We got to put the process in place to win, and I know what that is, and I know what that blueprint is and how we have to go, about that. If excellence is a standard, and that's what our goal is, then these are the non-negotiables that we have to use to get there. So I think like I tell everybody, is we got to overachieve. It's like we didn't have the year we wanted to last year. Okay, most of the people off those teams left, or graduated, or if they were a top contributor, transferred.
Yeah.
You're going to look at maybe two returning starters on offense. I think we have 2 seniors.
Yeah.
And on defense, I think there's 4 returning starters, 1, 2, 3, maybe 5, and 3 seniors. So, I don't know. I know we're going to be good, but my junior year, we went 7-4. We'd won 98 undefeated. National championship. 99, blew out the first game of UNO. Won the rest of them, national championship. 2000 might have been the best team we ever had, but they won every single game, lost in the playoffs. And then 2001, we go 7-4. You talk about the world was going to end. I was embarrassed to go out, in public with Northwest gear. I was responsible for that. I was a quarterback. I was a part of that. So then the next year, we went undefeated during the regular season and lost in the semis. So, really a little bit I have in common with this group of seniors. When they go 6-5 and they're like, okay, well, are we bad? Well, no, you're not bad. You're in games. You got to find ways to close the gap, in 3 or 4 of those. Sometimes it's organization by us coaches. Sometimes it's the way we practice or the effort. It's just a handful of plays. And I emphasize with them because I was there. And there's no magic secret to winning more. It's you got to work harder, you got to have a great plan, and I think we have both of those. So I think we got a chance to be pretty good. I really do. I think we've got to grow older. We got to get older. We got a lot of kids just not shaving yet, that we're trying to get to that point. But it's not from lack of want to. And it's if you got guys that want to, Tulane, we never stepped on the field, and the other team's oh my God, look how big they are. Look how fast they are. Awesome. It's we're just going to outwork you. And we got enough guys, and we got a good enough plan. And then, when those opportunities do arise, they take advantage of it. And a great example I was told, the story, Matt Becker told the story. He played a long time ago. He's one of the Becker brothers. But he said, somebody talked about Barry Bonds one time. And Barry Bonds is one of the greatest hitters of all time. steroids or not, was a great hitter.
Still got to be able to hit the ball. He's one of the goats in my opinion. Because you know the amount of guys that took steroids but still couldn't hit the ball?
Right.
Like him, McGuire, Sammy Sosa, you still got to be able to contact the ball. So
I mean, they'd walk him with bases loaded. He led the league in walks and hits. But the greatest thing I thought they said is like when Barry got a fastball, he hit that fastball. And there might be nights where he was going to get one fastball a night. And the rest were going to be junk or outside or whatever. But when that opportunity presented itself, that guy, more than any player in history, hit it out of the park.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you're a team that has to overachieve or might be more middle of the road, you're not going to have any, like, I could take a team like Alabama, they might have like 15, 16, 17 shots. They might miss a deep pass, but they're going to have 5 or 6 more because they're just good enough.
Yeah.
Most of the teams that I've been on, we weren't going to get many. Like if we figured out a way to get somebody open against a team that's way more talented, we needed to hit that fastball. And like Tulane, we did that. You know, it's like, okay, these guys, like when this opportunity presents itself, there's 4 or 5 plays that'll change a game. Just don't know when they're going to happen. It's like you got to have that mindset and expect it and be ready for it. And that takes time. You know, it's just a way to practice. And we've started that, but we, the Bearcats, are going to need to do the same thing. You know, we're not going to be able to miss a whole bunch of chances early on and right away. I mean, we play Mankato first game of the year. You know, they're going to be a top 5 team that they're going to be bigger, they're going to be stronger, they're going to be faster. But I don't think they're going to have more heart than us, and I don't think they're going to play as hard.
Yeah.
And I'll go to battle with those two because I say it all the time. You know, football's not a math test. You know, just because they have these numbers and we have these numbers, and you put them together, they net higher than us. We're still going to go ahead and play this game.
Yeah.
You know, because I think passion trumps logic sometimes. So we'll see what happens. I think we have the blueprint for it, and I think we have the right kids to do something with it, and just now we got to go put it all together, you know, and have some fun with it.
Yeah, y'all get a great chance to run with that, especially this is first year in a while that Northwest has been seen as the underdog in a lot of games, and I mean, that pressure's worked out pretty well in the past, so I'm excited to see what it does this year. But appreciate your time, Coach. Thanks for coming out. You got any last things you want to shout out? Anything you want to say?
No, I'm blown away with the setup here. This is a big time. I'd love to come back. Let's do one mid-season, touch base. Maybe let's do a Halloween episode. You ever dress up in here or something?
I will dress up in here for Halloween. That sounds like a blast. Well,
hey, I've even gone out to practice in a Halloween costume. I went out as Vader one year, so we'll do Halloween. Yeah. Run it by the producer back there and see what we can do.
Yeah, we'll get you back on mid-season, but I appreciate your time, Coach. All right. And, have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you.